I've gotten a wet paper towel over the whole surface of this cardboard. See, it's drying quickly. I'm going to go over it again in a while. Let this cardboard soak up a little bit of moisture, but I don't want the cardboard moist on the surface when I actually do my work. It's kind of a pour mat, anti-static mat, and now the surface is kind of where I want it. It's swelling up a little bit, but it's getting dry on the surface again. Well, before I get too happily ripping this thing apart, I suppose I better make sure my motherboard works. I really don't have enough to mock it up. I guess I can fire it up without a hard drive. Let's see how that goes. She's alive! She's alive! I had a little panic at first. I couldn't get it to come up at all, and the CPU wasn't heating up. But I didn't have one cable plugged in. After I pulled the CPU and looked at it and everything else and mucked around a bunch. Another unboxing. More computer stuff. Still having trouble with my computer build and making progress. I learned what I suspected before. I was trying to make sure it wasn't hardware related. I was kind of doubting it because everything seems to work. But it turns out to be just be drivers. But it turns out installing Windows 7 on a Ryzen based computer is quite tough. They just dropped support for USB. Need a special handler in terms of Windows 7. So the easy way to make Windows 7 work for an install is to use a PS2 keyboard, a wired 2SP keyboard. It's a little awkward getting around, but eventually I figured it out. That's kind of neat. I'll have to play with that. It's actually a DAC, if you think about it. It's a headphone and microphone, analog to USB. It's a freebie. It's a bonus to buying, I think it was with this guy. It's one of these two here as a bonus. I've got my main old Windows, and I don't know if it's going to work now I've learned so much more about how these drivers go. I could be SOL trying to get Windows XP running on this computer. I may have to do it as a virtual machine and not with a boot manager. Anyway, my old boot drive that had my main operating system on it, which was still XP, is on a hard drive that's an IDE hard drive. This new board doesn't do anything with IDE anymore, so to make it into SATA, I got a adapter because my main boot hard drive is still, it's a pretty old drive. I'm kind of tempting fate by even using it. I'm not going to use it long term. I'm going to copy the data off on a new hard drive. Oh, that's what the other box is. Sneak attack. This is bi-directional though. It's a IDE to SATA converter. And it wasn't that expensive. And you got to use one SATA connector or the other depending how you're using this thing. And then your IDE on the other side. I don't know if there's anything. I don't think you have to set slave and master and all that stuff for this thing. And they gave me a power adapter. And a SATA cable. I got so many SATA cables now. It's ridiculous. Okay. SATA cables for sale. Now, I was hoping to reuse this for my old computer. But there again, it was IDE. It wasn't IDE. It was another standard that's gone on this motherboard. So I needed to go to PCIe because that's the only thing that's left on the motherboard. The old, it's slipping my mind right now. IDE. There's another standard. Is a nice long white jack, card edge jack. They're no longer in these PC boards either, so I had to get a different converter here so I can solve my parallel jack, my precious parallel jack for my precious printer, which I still use and still love. I've had that printer since my 8-bit Atari days, and it still works. It's a very practical printer. This is going to be that hard drive that I'm waiting for. I don't have a physical hard drive hooked up right now. I'm just trying to work with my SSDs. I want to get my OS installed on an SSD. I want to get Windows 7 installed on an SSD. And that's a real challenge. Like the USB issue I started talking about, the USB driver. The next driver that was a big problem is the M.2 driver for my SSD. That's an M.2 SSD. M.2 SSDs, for those who don't know, are these little PC boards that are real small, real thin little wafer, and it slides right into a jack right on the PC board and bolts down with one screw, a little strip. And they're real tiny, real lightweight. It's the way to go because with M.2, and there's two different kinds of M.2 interfaces you've got to understand too. Just because it's M.2, it may not be super fast. It may only be SATA fast, just very fast. But you can actually go faster than SATA by going PCIe. And you can do that through that M.2 jack. You can do either one. You can do SATA or PCIe through that, are both carried on that jack. So depending on the hard drive you get, be aware of that. Just because it's M.2, it may not be PCI M.2. It may just be SATA M.2. Still very fast, but not as fast as it can be these days. This is my hard drive. That's neat packaging. And I got the Wolf or something, Iron Wolf. We'll see how it goes. It's not really made. Well, it's good for heavy use supposedly, and it's going to get heavy use heat-wise. It's not the full 7. I'm doing this again. I bought another 59 RPM or whatever the RPMs are on these things instead of the 72, the real fast ones, because they run a little cooler, and for something that's going to run continuously, I'll take the speed over reliability. And that's worked out so far because that, like I was saying, that old drive I have, I believe, is the same way. And it's still going. I really should back everything off of it. I don't realize how old that drive is. It's been in a few different computers, so it's an old drive now. I'm going with Seagate. Seagate's got kind of a checkered reputation, but they all do, of course. I know a lot of people are really religious about Western Digital, and everybody's got their favorite brand. I've actually heard Hitachi's the way to go, or whatever. So now my IDE to SATA adapter is installed onto the hard drive, the IDE hard drive. I also have an IDE optical drive. I was hoping to hook this adapter to the end of the cable, but I'm going to need some kind of gender bender to make that happen, if that would even work. It'd be nice to make this adapter drive both devices and the cable. It's kind of nice getting these ribbon cables out of the device. There's no more, the modern computer, no more ribbon cables. Floppy drives are gone, and IDE is gone. Everything's SATA or USB 3, except for my old antiques here. I'm either going to have to buy a second one of these adapters and use still another SATA port just to drive this optical drive, or I'd like to try to find that gender bender. So when I fire this puppy up again, it's going to see 4 hard drives that it hasn't seen before. One of them's unformatted, brand new, that I'm really going to use to move out of the IDE hard drive. That may be what I do. I'll just move out of the IDE hard drive, put all that information on the 4, and then probably stuff that IDE hard drive full of backup information and unplug it. Then I could just use the adapter on the optical drive and not even worry about this drive except for emergency backup. That might be something to do. Stuff it full of a bunch of old photos, from several years. Backup. That might be the ticket here. I got plenty of hard drive space without this ID drive, and this drive is so old, like I was saying earlier. It's kind of a miracle of technology that she's still alive, especially for a Seagate. Got a lot of drives it's going to see, and it's got a new parallel interface and serial. Old time. All this clownish fan wiring here. I had to splice in for that adapter out of the feed for this fan controller, so hopefully there's not too much noise on that thing. But it should work. I'll do some cable management later when I know everything's working and I have everything done the way I want it to do, and probably switch that adapter to the drive once I get this drive in backup status. This power supply actually looks pretty good. I probably didn't need to replace it. I read on Cube Computer's channel the problems he had with this exact same unit, however, so I figured better safe than sorry. It is pretty old power supply. His took a surge and blew something, but he also said his cap was swelling. And I don't know if you think this is a swollen cap. They can be pretty deceiving when they got this plastic cap on the end. These plastic caps tend to pop upwards. It pushed down a little when I first touched it. I suspect the cap is fine. A little wasted money. But the power supply I got now is a little bit better. It's a thermal take. It's got a little bit of ratings in it. Well, trying to get my rebuilt computer going. Hardware seems to work, but it fails. These attempts were doomed to start with. The M.2 drive can't even be seen by these older operating systems. And these older operating systems handled USB differently than the new systems apparently do. So without the right drivers, I was kind of screwed. I surrendered, put on Windows 10 on the advice of a friend of mine. No cursor, looks like. Usually I get a cursor that's frozen, just like I had in Linux. So that's why I'm not putting up many videos in a while here. My little laptop is just too wimpy to properly deal with videos.